So, oh no. So, what are the feelings? What are the feelings about the senior shirts? The design of the senior shirt. You guys like the senior shirts?
Yeah. No,
yeah.
We're not allowed to say anything about it. I designed it. We're not making any comments.
Okay. I mean, I was going to say that I love them and they're like the best I've ever seen, but not a big deal.
Shannon's like, my ego can't hurt my feelings, John.
It's a good way to live life. Shoot, I lost my page. This might take me a second. That's all right, I can remember. If not, we'll just go with it. All right. Okay. So let's get started with this. Excuse me. With your thesis, the reason I want to spend a little bit of time working through this or going through this is because I think that it's important that that you guys understand what my expectations are for the next 8 weeks. All right. October 9th, as you'll see whenever you get your process document, is the due date for the provisional thesis. We will talk all about that and what that is, but we know that that is coming up quickly. It doesn't feel like it because it's still August, but we have 4, 5, 6, 7, about 7.5 weeks until that. And so to think about 3 readings, 3 meetings, provisional thesis in 7.5 weeks, that's not a ton of time. Think about when this class was like a semester-long class. It would cut that in half, and you have to do the same amount of work, right? So it's not a lot of time, but it's something that the biggest thing is that if you just give yourself to it and find a way to enjoy the readings, because all of these are really interesting readings, it'll come easy. The language that I use in that the writing a 10-page thesis for Worldview sheet of paper that I gave to you is that giving yourself over to these readings, the meetings, this class content in and of itself leads to this thing called an intuitive spark, which in other words, that's like a light bulb moment. We put our experiences, our passions, what we're reading, the stuff we're engaging with together, and we can maybe come up with a really interesting thesis. We'll talk about that in a second. Kyle.
So are the meetings over the Pascal thing we read the other day, or stuff you're going to give us for our
the specific topic? So does that mean you need to unassign yourself for the meeting? Okay. I don't know if I can do that, but you can. I'm not sure either. If you can't, let me know, and then I'll do it. Not a big deal. I thought it was very fortuitous of you. I was like, oh my gosh, all right, first meeting, here we go. Yeah, no, it's not. The Pascal reading is something that's going to base our class discussion and stuff for over the next week over that topic. Yeah. I did? Perfect. It's because I can read your mind. Okay. So here's what we'll start with a thesis, okay? This is you. Everyone's blue, which is very appropriate. Well, except for a couple of you, but whatever. After today, when you get your reading and everything, you will work through 3 readings and meetings with me. These are the things that will help, along with what I'm going to talk about now, that will help you work towards this thing called a provisional thesis. After that, again, this is all in the process. You have 2 readings and 2 meetings with me that will help you work towards this thing called a working outline. After fall break, we'll talk about the working outline. I don't want to worry about that now. What I want to focus on now is just our broad approach going into this process and what I think can help you be successful and come up with a really interesting thesis and just what a thesis is. The English department has all of their language for thesis statements and stuff. That's great. I would consider what I'm about to tell you and what we're going to talk about today as being underneath the umbrella of the English department. I'm not going to go into that much detail because Mrs. Reese and Mr. Wildman are the professionals. They're the experts at that. I just take my language from them and try to make it unique and specific to Worldview. So here's what we're going to do. The first key thing that you need to understand is that discipline is something that will create success for you. Discipline is a way that a thesis might come. All that comes from is doing these two things. Meeting with me. The meetings are going to be the key component of understanding whatever readings it is that you're going through and helping to develop a thesis. The way that you do that is by engaging in the readings. Engagement with the readings is going to be the most important part of this course because it's not just reading for understanding. I'm not going to give you something and you have to understand it and you get an A for that. That's the hard part about this course, is that I'm requiring you to think more about the stuff that you're reading. Understanding is just the first part. The next part is, I would even say, like in your reading log, picking out a quote and latching on to that quote. Like, oh man, this is really interesting. You might not even know why. That's okay. I read lots of stuff that I'm like, wow, that really is interesting, but I have no clue what that's saying. If that is you, underline, put it in your reading log. In our meeting that you sign up for, hey, fine, I read this, I don't know what it means, but I know I'm interested in it. That's the type of stuff that like makes my hair stand on end. Like, I love to have conversations about stuff like that. Because it's not just, I guess it's like suffering is okay. It's like when people like get to the edge of their seat because they're excited to talk about something. That's what I desire for all of you out of this. I know that won't always happen, right? Because not everyone is as nerdy as I am about reading, St. Augustine or Bernard of Clairvaux, right? But that's part of this idea of like engaging, is that find a way to get that excitement about this stuff. Because if you do, I promise you that this process will be very, I almost said easy. That's not the right word. Much more enjoyable, yeah. Simple. Beneficial, I think enjoyable. Those are good words, right? So here's what I mean by this, and I want to give you guys an example. Has anyone here read Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis? Yeah, I read it a long time ago. I've read it a couple times, but it's been a while. I'm actually going through it again with my small group at my church. And I was listening to it on the way in, and there was this quote from a chapter that you'll actually read if your topic is goodness. What is a good life? And the quote says, and now as I say this, I'm going to blank on the wording of it. Oh, the quote says, laws do not make good men, but good men are necessary for a good society. So in my car, I was like, that feels important. So like pause the book, because it's like an Libby audio book. Pause it and was just like thinking through what that actually means. Like, what is that actually saying then? Well, what are the roles of laws then in our society? If laws don't force us, maybe that's the right word, to become good men and women, then what does? Like, what's behind that comment? And if a good society like, Eden, in essence, is what we desire, how do we get there if we have these laws, but they don't actually do anything to make us good people? If good people are good, do you see what I'm saying? Like, that's what engagement is. You don't just think, oh, that was cool, but you begin to ask these other questions. Well, but like, why are laws important? Because like with that quote, there you go. I almost said topic again. With that quote, right? I think that that's a really interesting quote because that has like the seed of a worldview paper. I would encourage none of you to write worldview papers on this, but I'm going to say it just because that's where my mind went today, of abortion, right? So here's my point. Abortion is legal up to a certain point, right? In the 50s and 60s, it was illegal, right? Before Roe versus Wade. But a really significant claim within Christianity is we need to make abortion illegal, overturn Roe versus Wade because we are against abortion. Okay, great. But how do you encounter that idea with what Lewis was saying, that laws don't make good people? Overturning Roe versus Wade and making abortion legal isn't going to keep people from having abortions. That's why in the 60s people would go to Mexico, or they would go to the back alley, right? And women would die from having abortions that were unsafe. Again, this is not me being pro-choice in saying that. It's just an observation of reality. So what is it that's behind actually getting people or wanting people or helping people to not desire to make that decision? For Lewis, it is 100% not a law. something more significant. That is what we call a thesis idea. That's really interesting. Because then you get into the idea of like, well, what makes people do good things? What makes people do bad things? What keeps people from doing bad things, right? Like, all of these other questions begin to come up. I'm just belaboring the point, but that is all about engagement with your reading. And that comes from just one quote. And that was me on my write-in this morning. This is something that if you give yourself to, that spark, that light bulb moment will happen sooner rather than later, and that is the best case scenario for you when it comes to like thinking through thesis ideas and a thesis statement possibly. Okay? The way that we talk about, the way that we like really engage, and I think that a way that we can make this stuff engaging is by what I refer to here as your passions, right? But on your reading log, if you look at the top, there's worldview topic, and then right underneath it, there's a thing that says interdisciplinary issue. That is something that all of you are required to bring into your paper. I'm going to give that another name, though. I want to call that like the application issue. Because really all that is I've mentioned people talking about purpose and like writing thesis papers on purpose and food, right? Food would be that application issue. It's something that you deal with or you encounter on a day-to-day basis or like in your everyday life that doesn't help us to better understand your topic, but your topic helps us to better understand how we can engage with that day-to-day thing, right? So the readings about purpose are all about showing how we can actually like prepare, think about, eat food in a more healthy, both physically but also like spiritually way. I promise you, like, it sounds weird, but that's the beauty of this paper, is that you can write about anything. And inevitably, through those readings that you're engaging with, you bring that thing through the lens of the Christian worldview, and it makes it light up. Like it's vibrant. It now, like, is something for you to write about that you're interested in. In a week or so, I think it's like 2 or 3 weeks, we're going to spend a day talking about this issue, and I want to give you like a really clear example. But the example I'm going to give you is about baseball fields. And the topic is beauty. The article is all about how baseball fields bring us into the presence of God. That's weird. Yeah. But no, he literally talks about the baseball field and how it's infinite. Like it has stands, but the field never ends. That's an unbelievable observation. And about the beauty of the baseball field. And there's a lot more to the argument as well. But it's all about how that brings us into the presence of the divine. That sounds strange, but like that's where I want you to go with this. I want you to make this yours, and I want you to feel passionate about it. The worst thing you can do is in your topic that you've selected to pick something to write about that you're just like, I just don't care about this. Okay, great, find something else. But it just takes more work. It takes more engagement. I say more work in the sense of just thinking about it more. Not reading more, not writing more, not, doing anything else. Literally sitting in your room at night and instead of getting on your phone, just like brainstorming. Just thinking about something. Maybe skipping a Netflix rerun of The Office and spending that 27 minutes just like thinking about this, right? It just takes that work because that's where a thesis comes from. It doesn't come from reading it and being like, 1 + 1 = 2. Great, thesis. So, this interdisciplinary issue, and let me give you a really key point about it. And let's just stick with goodness, right? Goodness as the topic, the morality, right? What is a good life? In the past, and I think I've said this before, Gabe Bird wrote a paper on goodness and morality, and it was about soccer and competition. In essence, what he was doing is redefining what it means to be competitive. I appreciated it because I'm a very competitive person by nature. When I was like in my early 20s, I led Young Life and we played sand volleyball all the time. And I actually had our area director, like the boss, right, of Young Life, pull me aside once and say, hey, like, you got to calm down. Like, not because of like I was too intense, but because I wasn't like reflecting Christ. I was like, that doesn't make any sense to me because like I'm not yelling at anyone else. Like I'm not getting mad at like the freshman high school girl who like missed the ball. I'm getting mad at like myself. I'm being competitive like within myself. And it wasn't affecting anyone else other than like my intensity, but that's probably another story. But like Gabe's thesis put language to kind of what I felt a decade and a half ago. Like, no. Like, competition for me is about, like, me doing the best I can do and being the best I can be. And then by nature, in doing that, raising up everyone around me. Competition is not about, like, smashing the opponent. Competition is about yourself. Inherently, it is a discipline idea. That's beautiful. So at first, he starts off, I want to write a paper about soccer. Okay, well, what about it? And then you just continue to ask those questions. And you dig deeper to find something that, like, actually you might really care about, but you never really knew the language for it. That's why our meetings are so important, is that we can kind of come to that. And most of the time we will. Another one is the laws don't make good people, but good men are necessary for a good society. I always talk about how that is, if anyone does goodness, I'll probably bring it up to you as well, and I've yet to have anyone take me up on the offer. Honestly, because people weren't passionate about it. Totally fine. I think there is a fascinating thesis in this topic with that quote about the penal system and, like, prison reform, right? So, like, what's the purpose of prison? If laws don't make good men, but if you break a law, we send you to prison and you're immediately labeled a bad person. What does that mean about, like, our prison system? How does the Christian worldview help not to, like, give an outline of prison reform that we're going to present to, Hogsett? But how does it help you to better understand the role of prison so that then you can be transformed, so that you can go out into the world and actually begin to help other people? That's what this is about. So I think prison reform might be an even interesting one too. And here's the thing. All of these are biblically based, and all of these have to go through that lens of the Christian worldview, because I think that if they do, then that's what makes them something practical and important. Okay, let me pause. Any questions about the application issue? Here's what I would suggest. Literally right now in your commonplace book, or in your notes if you didn't bring it. I didn't mean for that to call you out, but it definitely did. Sorry. If someone, never mind, I'm going to stop.
Hypothetical.
Okay, you can write in your notes. Yeah. If, I would say, put passions at the top of a page, and then underline it, and then start making a list. If you are passionate about food, great. If you're passionate about sports, great. If you're passionate about music, great. Write that down. I don't want you to make the list now, but I want you to have something to wear. I'm getting too close to you guys without a mask on. I'm sorry. I've got to walk around. It's just for you so that you can begin, when you go through these readings, to begin maybe even seeing connections between some of the stuff that you're reading and some of the stuff that is on your list of what you're passionate about. It is of the utmost importance because this is what's going to make your paper process enjoyable, connecting what I'm giving you with what you care about. But also asking that question, so like if it's like, oh, I like sports. Well, great. What do you like about sports? Always asking that question that gets you to a more specific point, okay? All right, let's go through the rest of this really quickly. That idea of engagement is the thing that produces discovery. That's the light bulb moment, right? I kind of skipped over that, but we said it. That brings you to that thesis idea where all of a sudden, because of your engagement, because of what you're thinking about, that light bulb comes on. You're like, oh, I get it. Then that's what comes the thesis idea. Provisional thesis. It is provisional because it should change. Not the main idea, but the language and the specificity of it. Your thesis statements, when you first come up with them, are going to suck. And that's okay, because they all do. Mine do. That's why I have people like Mr. Wildman and Mr. Hingy and Mr. Jackson when I'm like, man, I'm thinking about this idea. What do you think? And I give it to them, and they're like, oh, that doesn't really make much sense. Like, okay, great. Why? And then we have this conversation. It's all about dialogue and learning. It's not about if Kirsten comes to me and is like, I've got this thesis idea. Like, well, it's not really a thesis. There's no argument in there. It's not like I'm making fun of her like, oh my gosh, you're so stupid. Okay, let's talk about this. But it's because I want to make it better. It's all about dialogue that just helps to encourage her to find a better, more specific argument that then she can create something else out of. Here's what a thesis contains. 3 things. It's unique. That does not mean that like Davis's thesis and his paper, we're going to go out and publish, right? That no one else has ever thought of it before. So I mean, that might be the case. I don't know. I haven't had that yet, but I definitely don't want to let that possibility go. But it's unique because it's yours. Number 2, it's specific. I like peaches. Okay, great. Why do you like peaches? What is it about peaches that you like? Thinking about all these questions that can try to help make that a little bit more specific, because that in and of itself is what we would call an observation. It is not a thesis statement. It is not very specific, but it's also, the third thing, definitely not an argument. That's what an observation is. Oh, okay. Aaron's shirt is blue. Not really much of an argument in there. Let me put it into worldview. Morality is objective. Okay, but why does that matter? Like, what are you actually trying to argue in there? Broad thesis statements will make your paper very easy to write because you'll have lots of content, but your paper will be awful because there is no actual argument in it. All of our meetings will work to turn your thesis from this to this, to this, to this, to this, right? But it's always possible to go too narrow and too specific. Then we'll be like, you got to pull back a little. Because if you paint yourself into a corner, there's no worse place to be in an argument. That's not us. There's no worse place to be in an argument or in a paper. Because then your paper at like page 4, you're like, oh crap, I ran out of stuff to write about. When this is an 8-page paper. So, crafting a thesis is an art form. In every sense of the word, of art, artistic. It takes thought, it takes engagement, and it's not going to come like a formula, okay? So, unique, specific, and it has to be an argument. And the reason that we write provisional is that these things, your readings, the stuff that you're engaging with, will help to change your ideas and change maybe like a focus that you want to have on it. And so the wording should change with that. Also, really quick, that's worth writing down. I've forgotten to say this to other classes. Any thesis statement should not have a conjunction in it. No and, no but, no because of. Just make it a statement, all right? And also, a meaning singular statement. Thesis statements aren't like a paragraph. I don't mean to demean any of you by saying that, but like I've gotten those in the past, and it makes it difficult. One statement, all right? Clear, concise, and effective. So, any questions about the thesis statement? You guys are very quiet today. This is the period after lunch, so all the blood is probably moving to your guts and not your brain. It's okay. Okay, let me give you an example. And I want you guys to try to help me make this more specific. 21st century Americans are prone to violence. 21st century Americans are prone to violence. 21st century Americans are prone to violence. This thesis I thought of like 2 nights ago just as like a sentence, right? Just off the top of my head. But it's not a great thesis. How can we make this better? How can we begin to work towards making this better? Based on the 3 things that I told you that a thesis should be. What are your guys' thoughts? Yeah. Add something to compare it to. Like what?
20th century American.
Okay. So compare with 20th century Americans. Yeah, because then your argument revolves around, I think naturally then begins to revolve around something that is different between 20th century and 21st century. So it focuses more on that idea rather than on this vague generality that Americans are violent, right? Yeah, that's good. What else? Yeah, Becca. Ah, all right. This is going to be really cheesy, but like specific, right? Specify. Like, is it murder? Is it rape? Is it assault? Is it road rage? Right? Just yelling and blowing up? Is it mass shootings? Is it whatever else? Yeah, that's a good one. What else? What else can we, let's just say this. What else can we specify in this? Make more specific. Yeah, Reese.
Which university are you? Like a specific age group or region?
Ah, okay. So, age, region, and I would even say country, because like if you go to another country and you say, oh, I'm American, it doesn't naturally assume that you're North American. Like if I read this and thought like all of North America, right, not just the United States, and I thought of like Canadians, I'd be like, no, that's definitely wrong. Canadians are like the nicest people ever. I'm serious. I lived there for a year while I was doing a doctorate there, and it was unbelievable. Like open doors. I had someone give me like $2 Canadian once because I was in line at a coffee shop and like realized I forgot my wallet, and this woman behind me just paid for me. Unbelievable. Like that happens here, but it's like few and far between. Like you go in Starbucks and someone pays for your order, but this person was just like, oh yeah, here you go. Thank you. It was amazing. But I would definitely be like, no, we got to specify that. But I like the difference between age, region, like in the Northeast or in the South or, whoever else. I don't know why I said that and laughed, but anyways, what else? Moving on. What else? I mean, people are really like, angry in Florida. It's like all of the road rage things that I see. I don't know. In Texas, that's true. Seriously. Florida man, right? Okay, let me just give you this last one. What about the why behind it? Like, what if we ask the question, okay, prone to violence, sure, but like, what's behind that argument? Why are people prone to violence? Think about this, knowing that you have no prior, like, knowledge of this, but why might people be prone to violence?
We're in a rush all the time.
Okay, that is one. Yes, we're in a rush. And so if my time is inconvenienced, that bubbles up like all of these other feelings, and then I can lash out. That's usually why road rage happens. Yeah, Rachel?
We're under a lot of stress.
Ooh, all right. A lot of stress. I think stress gets even more specific than rush because we're in a rush because we're stressed, right? That's great. What else? Yeah, Kyle. Selfish? Sure. Guys, think less about like even internal issues, though I love that you guys are going there, but like external. What in our experience might cause us to be prone to violence?
Well, I was going to say...
That's okay.
Fear.
Yeah, fear is the one that I always say. Fear that produces insecurity, that produces like pride and all these other things that if someone tries to challenge me, then I lash out, right? There is something even here of like the why behind, like toxic masculinity, right? Might be one of those things as well. But it's true. It is. Yeah. Revenge. What causes someone to seek revenge, do you think? Like not just that someone like wrongs you in some way, but like more internally. What is the motive behind someone wanting to like seek revenge? Huh? You feel less. So I would say it could be fear or insecurity. That's good. Yeah, Dave.
Because there's little grace and we're very competitive in our world.
All right, I guess. I feel like you were disagreeing with my agreement with Gabe Bird's thesis. Dude, I'm joking. I'm totally joking. But I agree with you. It is a claw your way to the top, like mentality. 100%. Yes, 100%. Yeah, John, last one. So an argument could be made that like we're desensitized through things like video games, TV, movies, right? I don't, like, here's the thing. If some of you are like, oh, I don't know about that, that's a good thesis. Because automatically you disagree with it. Thank you, Aaron. It is an argument. If at any point in time you come across a thesis idea and you're like, man, I really like that, but like, no one's going to agree with me. Perfect! But also, as long as you can argue for it, right? If your thesis is like, well, Jesus was actually a ghost of Abraham, and like that is no valid argument for it. But if there's a valid argument for it, and you're still like, man, not a lot of people are going to agree with me. Great, because all I care about is I don't want you to care about if even I agree with you. All I care about is that you're able to develop and cultivate an argument from all of the stuff that you've been reading in your experiences, in Scripture, and your faith, and the Christian worldview, and all of these other aspects. That's the most important part, is are you able to argue for what you're trying to say? So, this is great. And so maybe like a more specific way of articulating this thesis would be, fear is the root of the American desire for violence. I don't know. It was all time in my head. It's not great, but it's getting a little bit more specific because it answers that why. Also, any of these can make it more specific. So once you begin to ask that question of why, how, you find that there are about a dozen different rabbit holes that open up, that you could travel down any one of them. There's a thesis there. It just takes sitting and thinking. Okay? Okay. Any questions about anything that we talked about today? It's okay if there's not. There will be, that comes up, and that's all right. If there is, again, the only thing that I care about is that you guys feel comfortable reaching out to me if you don't understand, or if you're confused, or if you're stuck. The literal worst thing that you could do in this class is if you're stuck, if you feel stuck, is to just sit in that yourself. I'm here solely for you. Please understand that, okay? So here's what we're going to do now. The questionnaire that you have in front of you, since there's no questions. The questionnaire that you have in front of you is something called the Proust questionnaire. I think his name is Marcel Proust. He's a French philosopher, writer, just critical thinker, things like that. Came up with this questionnaire that's actually like 45 questions long, but some of them weren't as appropriate, age appropriate, and like context appropriate. And I've whittled it down to about 35. This is a questionnaire that helps Marcel Proust to try to see, he's using it to help people to see two things about themselves. That, man, they are really, really good and valuable, and like there's a lot of good stuff about them. But also, where do you have room to grow? In other words, where are you like a terrible human being? Like what comes out about you when you answer these questions is really what is true about yourself. Because the way that I want you to answer these questions is to not think about it. I want it to be like an ink blot test, right? So like you get an ink blot and it's like, oh, that's a butterfly. That's a skull. That's my dad yelling at me when I was 7. That's, whatever it is, right? That's what I want this to be for you. So when you read a question like, what's your greatest fear? Just whatever's the first thing that comes to mind, all right? And it doesn't have to, I'm not looking for deep answers for this. My greatest fear is 1,000% snakes. Not losing my faith, not going to hell, not dying alone, not all these other things, right? My greatest fear is snakes, even gardener snakes. I scream high-pitched if I see a snake. I'm not looking for deep, but if you want to go there because that's literally where your mind goes, man, do it. This is going to be the basis for our discussion at the beginning of Monday, because we want to begin this when we start talking about knowledge and what's my experience. The whole goal behind this is I'm going to ask, like, hey, let's go to question number 8, and who wants to give their answer? If you don't feel comfortable giving your answer, don't raise your hand, all right? It's okay. But I want us to kind of share some of these. I'm not going to ask, like, the deepest, darkest questions, right? It's like, yeah.
What does, like, in the context here, deplore?
Deplore is what do you dislike or what do you hate? Yeah, so there's that. Number 6, what's your greatest extravagance? That is a want, not a need in your life, right? And something that might cost a lot of money or just doesn't and it's a want. That is different than number 22, what's your most treasured possession? Like one of my most treasured possessions is I have a book that Leo like wrote his name in when he was first learning how to write his name. It's like one of the first times I've seen him write Leo, like in order and right and everything. That's like one of my most treasured possessions. Totally worthless and valueless, but to me, it's everything. Do you get what I'm saying, the difference between those? And then the other one, I think there was one more. We'll get to it as you come to it. Answer these. Have these done by Monday. You've got 15 minutes. Should be able to do that. If you haven't come up and gotten your process document, your book and everything, just put your mask on and come up and start a line, and I would love to do that too. What? Questionnaire. Did I give you one? Did I give you the other sheet? Oh, all right. Well, I just left you out. There you go. Okay, Jackson, what is yours?
What's my responsibility?
Responsibility to others. All right. All right, so this is your first reading. It's that. That's the one that's the reading log. You'll read that, mark it up, fill out your reading log, and then meet with me. This is your book. You're not reading all of it. This tells you what you're reading in it. So chapters 1 through 4, and then the appendix. Okay? This also happens to be the reading for this. So when you get to this third reading, I'll tell you what to read from this. So 2 birds with 1 stone in that sense, right?
Can I staple this?
Yeah, that's yours. That's your copy. Yes, Nicole.
To whom do I belong?
Great.
I have that one.
All right. So this is your process document.
Okay.
The first reading is this book. This is also your book for the semester book report.
Okay.
So hold that. This is the first reading is pages 1 through 33. So,
Jim said
oop.
Covenant 100.
34, thanks.
Maybe you should do that from.
So you will read from page 1 all the way to there for your first reading.
Okay.
But then you'll be 34 pages into the book, right? For your whole book. So that's the goal, is a 2 birds, 1 stone.
Okay.
Yeah. What's yours? The same one? All right. Did you hear what I said?
Yeah.
Perfect. There you go.
My goodness. What is a good?
All right. Oh, I didn't pray. Dang it.
Next class. Too late to pray now, sir.
I know, right? We've already started. I can't do it. This is your first reading from Mere Christianity. This is, so the first reading there, reading log, then meet with me, and then we move on. Your second reading is this. This is your book for the semester.
Okay.
The little bookmark in here will tell you what to read, which is the entire book. But once you get to that reading, I'll tell you what to read from here.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Goodness, but suffering.
Suffering? Okay.
You know, tell me.
Oh, yeah, the same. Okay, so The Problem of Pain, this is your book for the semester, also your first reading. You are reading, I'm going to mark the 2 chapters. That is the reading for that first meeting.
Okay.
It's chapter 6 and chapter 7, okay? But then you'll have read those 2 and have, be a fifth of the way through the book for the semester, all right?
I have the same thing.
Same thing? All right. Oh, no, suffering.
Yeah, I was like.
There you go. Yeah.
I think mine is, what is the...
Okay, do you know for sure?
Yeah, I do. Because Arthur showed me.
Okay.
I just had to remember if that's what he told me.
No, that's all right. Okay, so here's your process. This is your book for the semester and your first reading. Yes.
Oh.
So this will tell you, what you have to read, which is the whole book.
Okay.
But what you're reading for the first reading there is just that second chapter.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
So the second chapter of this is what you're going to read, do your reading log, and then meet with me
For the first meeting?
for the first meeting. And then this is what you will read for the whole semester.
Okay, got it.
All right.
Identity.
Identity? All right. All right, so here's your document. This is the book for the semester and the first reading. The first reading for identity is long. It is this entire section all the way up to here. So it's about 70 pages. But you're halfway done with the book for the semester, and you've got the first reading out of the way. And these other ones are pretty short. So so does that make sense?
Yeah.
Perfect. So that first book is the reading log, everything, and then you'll meet with me. All right.
Significance of human history.
All right, history. History.
For the one I must support others.
Oh, yeah. All right, so Chesterton. You'll see in here that what you're reading is this, Introduction, Part 2, Conclusion, not the whole book. This is your first reading, which is this, right? So you read this, reading log, meet with me. Then your second reading comes from there, and it's from a part of what you have to read. So I'll let you know that whenever we get to the second meeting. Cool.
What is my experience?
Cool. So we got this and this. So again, this will tell you what you're supposed to read, but also this is Augustine's Confessions. That's the first reading. The first reading is book 1 and 2, which is a part of what you have to read for your semester project as well. Okay?
The evil one.
Evil? All right. All right, so this is your book for the semester, and it's to read the entire book, but your first reading on this, that's yours. Your first reading is this book as well, and that is these two chapters, chapter 6 and 7. So you'll do those, reading log, meet with me, and then this will be the rest of the semester, and then you'll continue to go through those. Okay? What's yours?
How do we understand and respond to evil?
Okay. All right, so this is your document. The first reading is this book as well,
Okay.
but not the whole book, just these two chapters. All right?
Okay.
But this is the book that you'll read for the whole semester.
All right.
Okay?
So the first meeting is over these.
Yes, it's over those two chapters.
So I'll try to change mine to like a later.
Yeah, no worries.
So I have a question
Yes.
that I need your help with. So I consider myself a very bad reader.
Okay.
And that's not because I don't want to do it. Because when I read, it goes into what it is. So it's hard for me to focus on reading. So going through this class, how do you what advice would you have for me to get through these readings?
So I would have your reading log
Yeah.
open while you're reading.
Okay.
It might take you a little bit of extra time, but you won't have to read it twice,
Yeah.
and it'll really cut down on the length of the process so that you don't have to read it more than once, and you don't have to meet with me more than once, but like understanding the reading can actually be promoted through that.
Okay.
So having your reading log open, and then whenever like a quote or an idea or something sticks out at you, typing it in the reading log.
Okay. So just
So that you have like the key points there and like whatever stuck out to you, but you don't have to worry about going back through and thinking like, what did I just read?
Yeah. So if I just know in my head before going to the reading, what am I looking for?
Yeah.
That would be a good thing.